There's a strange moment that happens every year around the Super Bowl. It's not during the game, it's not even about football. It's the moment when someone casually says, "I don't really care about it," and the room reacts. Not aggressively, not loudly, just oddly, like something important was dropped and nobody knows where it landed. What's interesting isn't that millions of people love the Super Bowl. That part makes sense. What's interesting is how uncomfortable people get when someone doesn't. Psychology says that reaction has very little to do with sports. It has everything to do with how humans relate to excitement, identity, and shared emotional rituals. Let's start with something simple. When people watch the Super Bowl, they often talk as if they're personally involved. They say, "We won." They say, "We got robbed." They feel pride, anger, relief, sometimes all within a few minutes. But objectively, nothing in their personal life changed. They didn't train, they didn't play, they didn't influence the outcome, yet the emotional payoff is real. That's because the brain is incredibly good at emotional borrowing. If something feels connected to your identity, your brain rewards you as if you earned it yourself. For some people, that mechanism hits hard. For others, it barely activates. So when someone who doesn't care about the Super Bowl watches all of this unfold, it can feel confusing. Not judgmental, just distant, like watching people react intensely to a stimulus that doesn't register the same way. And that difference isn't about intelligence, culture, or being above it. It's about how different nervous systems assign meaning. Some people experience excitement externally. They feel more alive when emotion is amplified by crowds, noise, stakes, and momentum. Other people experience excitement internally. They need quiet alignment, curiosity, or personal relevance for emotion to spark. When those two styles collide, misunderstanding happens. The Super Bowl is a perfect collision point because it's not optional. It's framed as the event. If you don't care, people assume you're being difficult, trying to stand out, or secretly judging them. But often, none of that is true. Many people who don't care about the Super Bowl aren't rejecting joy. They're rejecting forced synchronization. There's a difference. They don't like being told when excitement is supposed to happen. They don't like pre-packaged emotion. They want to feel something because it feels real to them, not because a calendar says tonight is meaningful. And when excitement becomes scheduled, sponsored, and socially enforced, it stops feeling organic. For some minds, that immediately breaks the spell. Another piece people don't talk about enough is emotional efficiency. Some people enjoy spending emotional energy on things they can touch, influence, or build. They like feedback loops, effort to result to meaning. Watching a game doesn't offer that. You can care deeply, feel everything, wear the jersey, follow every stat, and still have zero impact on the outcome. For many people, that's fine. The experience is the point. But for others, that disconnect feels unsatisfying. It's not that they don't understand the appeal, they just don't feel rewarded by it. So while someone else is emotionally invested in a fourth quarter drive, they're quietly thinking, "This is a lot of feeling for something that won't change my life at all." That doesn't make them cold, it makes them selective. There's also the issue of emotional saturation. Modern life already demands constant attention. Messages, news, deadlines, notifications, conflict, noise. For many people, the Super Bowl doesn't feel like a celebration. It feels like one more thing asking for emotional bandwidth. One more night where you're expected to be alert, reactive, social, loud, and invested. For people who recharge in quiet, that expectation is draining. The party that feels energizing to one person can feel like endurance training to another. Same environment, completely different experience. And when those people decline, they're often met with confusion. Relax, it's fun. But fun isn't universal. What feels stimulating to one nervous system can feel overwhelming to another. Neither is wrong, they're just tuned differently. Another overlooked factor is how people relate to uncertainty. Sports thrive on unpredictability. That's the appeal, the tension, the suspense, the not knowing. But not everyone experiences uncertainty as exciting. Some people experience it as stress. Their body doesn't interpret suspense as pleasure, it interprets it as something to endure. So sitting through hours of fluctuating stakes, where the outcome doesn't personally matter, can feel like volunteering for anxiety, especially when there's no payoff at the end beyond "that was intense." For some people, Intensity itself is the reward. For others, intensity needs purpose. Without that, it's just noise. Then there's the social layer. The Super Bowl isn't just a game anymore. It's a ritual. Commercials, snacks, commentary, halftime performances, group reactions. Even people who barely follow football are expected to have opinions. And if you don't, there's this subtle pressure to perform interest, to nod, to react, to pretend you care about the ads. For people who value authenticity, that performance feels off. They're not trying to be different. They just don't like pretending. And that's where the loneliness creeps in. Because when everyone around you is emotionally aligned around something you don't feel, you start to wonder if you're missing something fundamental. Not intellectually, emotionally. It's not boredom. It's disconnection. And that can feel isolating in a way that's hard to explain without sounding dramatic. But here's something important. Not every preference needs a psychological explanation. Sometimes people just don't like football, the same way some people don't like olives, horror movies, or electronic music. We've gotten so used to analyzing everything that we forget a basic truth. Humans have different tastes. Not caring about the Super Bowl doesn't automatically mean you're sensitive, analytical, introverted, or overstimulated. You might just genuinely not enjoy it, and that's allowed. What's more interesting is how other people react to that, because the defensiveness often says more than the disinterest. When someone hears, "I don't care about the Super Bowl," and responds as if they've been personally criticized, that tells us something. It tells us that for many people, sports aren't entertainment. They're identity. They're belonging. They're one of the few socially acceptable ways to feel collective emotion without explanation. So when someone opts out, it can feel threatening, not because they're wrong, but because their indifference breaks the illusion that everyone is on the same emotional page. And that illusion is comforting. If everyone cares, the ritual feels meaningful. If enough people don't, it starts to look optional. And optional things force us to ask uncomfortable questions. So if you don't care about the Super Bowl, there's probably no single reason. It might be your temperament. It might be how you process emotion. It might be how you relate to uncertainty. It might be sensory overload. It might be authenticity. Or it might just be preference. All of those are valid. And if you love the Super Bowl, that's valid too. The problem isn't difference. The problem is assuming difference needs defending. We don't all have to experience meaning the same way. Some people lose themselves in the crowd. Others find themselves outside of it. Both are human. And the fact that millions of people can care deeply about a single game while millions of others feel nothing at all, and society keeps functioning, is actually kind of remarkable. That diversity isn't a flaw. It's the reason shared moments exist at all. If this resonated with you, feel free to subscribe for more psychology deep dives like this.